Welcome to the Lovestead.
Hi BookTube, welcome back to Lady Lovestead Reads. My name is Jessica and today I'm sharing my June 2021 wrap-up. Let's take a look at my stats. At the start of the month, I had 216 books on my Kindle. I purchased 3 new books for my Kindle, so I now have 219 books on my Kindle. I've read 22 of those books for a reading percentage of 10% of the books on my Kindle read. On my physical bookshelves, I started the month with 379 books. I purchased 7 books, so I now have 386 books on my physical bookshelf. I've read 108 of those books, putting my reading rate at about 28% of my bookshelf read. Of the books I read this month, 6 of them came from the library, 2 of them came from my library's digital collection, 2 of them were from Kindle Unlimited, 1 I purchased new, and 1 I purchased used. Of the books I read this month, 3 of the writers were people of color, 1 of the writers was LGBTQIA. There's probably more, but unless they overtly state it in their author bio, I don't count it. 1 author had a disability, and 8 authors were women. For genre, in nonfiction, I read 1 biography. In fiction, I read 2 fantasy, 4 contemporary literary fiction, 4 mystery, 1 thriller, and 2 romance. For target audience, I read 2 middle grade, 2 young adult, 1 new adult, 7 adults. And for star ratings, I had 3 5 stars, 2 4 stars, and 7 3 stars. So it was a really good month in terms of quality of books. This month I started 3 new book series, and of those 3, I will continue 1 of them. 3 of the books that I read were books continuing in series that I am already reading, meaning that they're series I started prior to this month. First, Siege and Storm by Leigh Bardugo. This is the 2nd book in the Shadow and Bone trilogy, and I rated this a 3 stars out of 5. This was the least favorite book for me in the Shadow and Bone trilogy. It introduced one of my new favorite characters, Nikolai, but it had some pacing issues. It was pretty slow, and then there were some parts of it that just didn't feel believable to me. So a 3 star is still a good rating. A 3 star I would still recommend to people, but of the 3 books in the Shadow and Bone trilogy, this was definitely my least favorite, but it was still fine. Like it was still an entertaining read. The 2nd book I read was Ruin and Rising by Leigh Bardugo. This is the 3rd book in the Shadow and Bone trilogy. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. I really liked it. I liked it the best out of all 3 of them. I liked the character development. I liked the way the plot structured. I liked the pacing of the book. I was kind of iffy about something that happens at the end. For those of you who know, I kind of wanted that character to stay dead. I think that would have been more impactful. If you know, you know. But aside from that, I thought that the ending was pretty good, pretty satisfying. And I will be buddy reading the next duology in the Grishaverse series, 6 of Crows, with my friend Ghachar at Seeker Books. Next, I read George by Alex Gino. This is a middle grade contemporary literary fiction. I read this for the Queer Lit Readathon. This is about a young child who is transitioning from male identity to female identity, and just the process of coming out at that age and all of the things that that entails. This was such a good book. It was a quick book. I feel like for the age group that it was targeting, it was done really, really well. And I gave it 5 stars out of 5. Book 4 was A Baker's Coven by Samantha Silver. This is the third book in the Spellford Cove mystery series, and I gave this book 3 stars out of 5. This was my favorite book in the Spellford Cove series so far because I feel like Samantha Silver really stretched her creativity in this one, because the main character in the Spellford Cove Cozy Mystery series is Robin, and Robin is a witch. She is a kitchen witch. So one of the skills that she has as a witch is she's able to see ghosts. And in this third installment, the ghost of the murder victim haunts her. And so she's able to kind of work with the ghost to figure out and solve the mystery. But it adds this layer of challenge because the police have ruled the death an accident, and Robin can't exactly go into the police department and be like, a ghost told me it was actually a murder. So it added this new layer to the mystery that just was really fun to read. So that is definitely so far my favorite of the Spellford Cove Cozy Mysteries. I am looking forward to the next one that should be out sometime in July 2021, and I gave this book 3 stars out of 5. Next, I read the only nonfiction that I read in June, which was Elizabeth by J. Randy Taraborrelli. This is a biography, and I read it as part of the Fierce Woman's Book Club pick for May and June. And I enjoyed this biography. I felt like Taraborrelli went a little bit overboard on the details. There were some details in there that he probably could have just left out that really didn't add anything to us understanding Elizabeth or her life. But aside from that, it was really interesting to learn about Elizabeth Taylor. I had no idea that she lived such a fraught life full of like abusive relationships and drug addiction and bad choices. And it was really nice to see her turn things around towards the end of her life and to end up finding some peace. So this was a really satisfying biography. It was so fun to learn more about Elizabeth Taylor, and I didn't know much of anything about her prior to reading this book other than she was like this glamorous icon. And so now I really want to watch some of her films and just learn a little bit more about her. I did give that book 3 stars out of 5. And the next book I read was Mr. Monk Goes to the Firehouse, and I shouldn't say that I read it, I DNF'd it. I didn't like this one simply because the setup is that the murder victim in this book is a dog, and having just lost one of my dogs this year, it was just too sensitive of an area for me. So I did DNF it, but it was the Killing Time with Cozy's Cozy Mystery Book Club June pick for their book club read, and I'll link you to their discussion of the book down below. Book 7 I buddy read with my friend Jaymes and my friend Liz. They both have booktube channels. James is James's Space and Liz is Reading Riley. I'll link you to them down below as well. And we buddy read The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. This is a dark academia thriller that was a book of the month pick for this month, and I really enjoyed this. So this is about Mariana, who gets a call from her niece that her niece's good friend has been murdered, and her niece Zoe is a student at Cambridge. So Mariana goes to Cambridge. Mariana is also an alumna of Cambridge, and she's dealing with some grief and some trauma in her own past. So she goes to help Zoe out, and she sees that there's this professor named Professor Fosca who has a group of female students that kind of flock to him, and they're the secret society that they call the Maidens, and they are somehow involved in this murder that has taken place. So Mariana goes through the process of trying to solve the murder. There is a twist at the end. I did figure out who did it, but not the way that they did it or the motive for the way that they did it. Like, that was a twist I just did not see coming. It was a jaw-dropping moment for me. Absolutely loved this book. I loved the atmosphere. The pacing was exquisite. The character development was great. Just enough to get you attached to the characters, but not overdoing it at the same time. So really enjoyed it, and I gave it 4 stars out of 5. Next, I read The Chance to Fly by Ali Stroker and Stacy Davidowitz. This is a middle grade contemporary literary fiction. I read this for the Disability Readathon. Ali Stroker is a Tony Award-winning actress who is the first woman in a wheelchair to be cast in a Broadway show. So it's an own voices story as well. The story is about Nat, who is a 13-year-old girl who uses a wheelchair, and her dream is to be a Broadway star. She auditions for the local community production of Wicked and gets a part, and it just is about her managing, it's about her journey through being on stage as someone in a wheelchair, and it really does a beautiful job of portraying systemic ableism for a middle grade audience. This book it's just beautiful. It made me cry at the end. I absolutely loved it. Highly recommend it. I gave it 5 stars out of 5. Next, I DNF'd How to Find a Princess by Alyssa Cole. This is book 2 in the Runaway Royal series, and this was a new release this year that I was really looking forward to, so it was quite disappointing that I DNF'd it, but something about the tone and style just didn't work for me, and there was a lot of like having to suspend your disbelief, and it just really felt like I was reading an inside joke that I wasn't really privy to, and I just didn't get it. I mean, I didn't get it. So I DNF'd it. Just wasn't for me. I'm sure some people out there will really love it, and looking at Goodreads reviews and ratings, a lot of people are really loving it. I wonder if I just need to read more of her backlist to be able to fully understand it. That could be it. But How to Find a Princess is a sapphic romance and an Anastasia retelling. So I was really looking forward to it, but it just didn't land for me. So that was the DNF. Next, I read Romeow and Juliet by Kathi Daley. This is a cozy mystery set on an island, and I'm forgetting right now the name of the island. I will leave it on the screen above here, but it's an island off the Pacific Northwest coast, kind of by the Vancouver area. And the premise is that the island is trying to decide whether or not to build this condominium to attract tourists or to not build it and keep the old traditional ways of living. The main character, whose name I also cannot remember, is opening up a cafe with her best friend, and it is a bookstore, coffee bar, cat cafe, because she runs a cat rescue with her aunt, and that just sounds so amazing. Sign me up. When do I move in? In this first installment, she's just purchasing the building to start renovating it to prepare for this new business, and her and her best friend find a man murdered in the building. And so that's the premise for the mystery, is that, you know, the man who was murdered is on the city council, and he was going to vote for the condos and then switch his mind and vote against the condos. And so there's a lot of like political intrigue in the mystery here. And I enjoyed it. The pacing was a little bit off at the end. I felt like the ending was quite abrupt. And it was a very short book for a cozy. It was under 100, or it's under 200 pages, which to me feels really short for a book. Even a cozy mystery, and cozy mysteries typically aren't very long, but that still felt very short. There was also a scene of fat phobia in this book that I really did not like, so my rating is 2.5, since, you know, places like Goodreads don't allow half star ratings. I rounded it up to 3 stars, but it's more of a 2.5 star read. Now with cozy mysteries, my friend Ro tells me that they get better as the series goes along, so if the first one isn't like awesome, you should still read the second one and see if it gets better. And I really do like the premise of the cat cafe coffee bar bookstore, so I'm going to go ahead and give the second book a try and see what it's like. But yes, this one was the 2.5 star read. Next, I read Ghochar by Vivek Sanbhag, translated by Srinath Perur, and this is a novella, and it's about a family whose uncle founds a spice company and moves them into a new economic bracket. So they're going from fairly impoverished to fairly well off. And it really is just a portrait of this family. Each chapter kind of covers one member of the family and their backstory and how they are interwoven into the family dynamics. Not a lot happens in this book. The most interesting point kind of comes at the end regarding the business. I don't know. People seem to say a lot of really good things about this one, but it wasn't one that wowed me personally. If it wows you, I'm very happy for you. And I'm not saying that it's not a bad book, but for me, it just didn't hit the way I like my literary fiction to hit. And it's probably not one that I will remember 5 years from now. So I gave it 3 stars out of 5 because, again, it wasn't a bad book. It just wasn't awesome. Next, I read It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. This is a dark romance. It is about domestic violence, and it's about the cycles of domestic violence, not only within a single relationship, but through generations of violence. And Colleen Hoover does such a good job of addressing that topic in a sensitive and smart way. Her writing is really accessible, so readers of any level can read and understand the story, understand the themes that she presents. And I did enjoy this for those reasons. But I felt like the pacing was really off for me. Like, at a certain point in the book, things just start happening. Boom, 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 boom. And that just didn't work for me. I wanted her to take a little bit more time with that portion of the story. And so this was a 3-star read for me. And then last, I read The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. This is a modern classic. It's about a young boy who goes to a museum with his mother. There's a terrorist attack. His mother dies, and the boy takes a painting that was her favorite painting called The Goldfinch. And then it's a Bildungsroman, which is a coming-of-age story, and we basically follow him throughout his life as he comes of age and struggles with what to do with this painting that he has in his possession. And this book is so good. I originally read this last February, and I DNF'd it because I got to a certain point where it got a bit slow and I just got fatigued because it is a really big book. It's 771 pages, almost 800 pages. Hardback, big pages, little print. And the audiobook was like 32 hours long. So it is a long one, and I think that I just got fatigued when I originally tried to read it last year, but I listened to it on audiobook this year, and that did the trick for me. So it all comes together so beautifully in the end. And yes, there's a part in the middle that kind of drags and slows down, but it comes together so beautifully, and I really grew to love the characters. There's so much to think about, so many themes that are addressed, like why do humans value art? What is the importance of art? What is the gray area between good and evil? What do you do when you make a decision that you should take care of right away, but then you just let sit and fester? It's just so good. Like, there's so much there. There's so much to unpack. It'd be a really good book to read for a book club, maybe over a couple of months, since it is so long. It's a book that demands to be discussed among people, and it's so good. So good. I gave it 5 stars out of 5. At the end of every month, I like to pick out my book of the month. I like to pick out a new favorite character, and I like to pick out my crush of the month. So for June, my book of the month was The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. My new favorite character is Nikolai from Shadow and Bone. Nikolai is a pirate prince. I love pirates, and Nikolai, the character, he's just so funny and quirky and smart, and I want to be his best friend. My crush of the month was Clarissa from the Maidens. Clarissa is an older woman. She is a professor of Greek tragedy, I believe, and she's super smart and elegant and sophisticated and totally my type. That'll do it for today's video. Tell me in the comments below what your favorite book from June was, and until next time, make sure that you continue to read good books, drink good coffee, take care of yourselves and each other. Bye!